Hi, you will find all sorts of problems trying to get your landscape into Roblox. So the best way that I've figured out to do it is to make these little strips here, and you start with something that you've already been able to import. In my case, it was the chicken coop, which is this little dot here. And then I copied that and I enlarged it, and I didn't make it too large because that creates a problem. Now I'm going to Shift D and duplicate and do this for the corners. I'm going to shift, they call that one, let me see, that's called map corner. I'm going to call this map corner right, and I'll make the other one map corner left. And then I'm going to take this same thing and I'm going to duplicate it with Shift D, and I'm going to take the origin and set it to the geometry so it's in the middle, and then rotate it by 90 degrees and move it up G and Y. And then I'm going to scale it in X to reach the top corner. And it's a little bit, you can tell there's a little bit of problem up here, so I'm going to hit Tab and just help this out a little with G in X and move it over like so, and just try to fix it. But we're really just looking at creating some corners here for our map, which we can then fill in. So once I have that, I'm going to Shift D and duplicate that and bring this down here. And so that gives me a frame for my landscape of the piece that I'm working with. So this will be map top. And this will be map bottom. And then you take each of these, and actually I think maybe we'll be able to fill, but I don't want to fill the whole thing in. So anyway, you take that one and you just export them. So you go export wavefront object, and we'll call this map corner right. And there's now this one here. And make sure when you're exporting that you have checked selection only, or you'll be in a big problem. And also check your triangles. They should be under 10,000. And one way to do that, by the way, is turn off everything. Turn off, because that makes the triangles really huge. Now the number of faces down here in triangles is 12. And the more that you turn off, the smaller your triangles will be. And that's important. So now export wavefront object map corner. What did I do there? This is the top. Okay. Export, wait a minute, and that's the map top. And now grab the map bottom and do the same thing. Make this map bottom. And now what happens when you go into Roblox Studio, I already imported that one, you can duplicate this one, which is really map corner left. Now I have to change the name. Map corner left.
Hey, how you
Hi,
doing?
I'm all right. Let me just pause the video.
Sure.
So you got map corner left, and you duplicate it with Control D. And then it should make another one in here somewhere. Or did it?
What is that?
This is Roblox. So Control D, there it is, map corner. I'm going to make this one map corner right. And having map corner right, to know where it is, I'm going to go and select my map corner right object and bring it in. It'll say that the mesh is large. You do not want to resize it, and you do, yes, want to move it to the given location, and it puts it on the other side of the map. So now I've got two sides of the map, and then you can do the exact same thing. You can take that one, that map corner right. Sometimes it doesn't happen when you click on it, it doesn't work. So take that map corner right and hit Control D to duplicate it. There's the other map corner right. Take that one, change its name to Map Top. Go down to this folder, select your Map Top, bring that in, don't resize it. Yes, you want to place it, and for some reason it doesn't place well. Look at that, that's odd, because then you would do the same thing. You would duplicate it and then take that duplication and make it Map Bottom. But it looks like we're going to get some distortion here, but go to Map Bottom, Map Top, Map Bottom, and put that in. Don't resize it. Move it to them. Okay. All right, so we do see that there is some distortion in this, but at least then we have some of the map in there. And then what you do when you're in there is you then duplicate your Control D and then move them, and then you can keep doing that until you fill in your terrain. And of course all that should go underneath the, so we'll have to change the locations of that, but that's how you can begin to fill in. Or we can fill it in like this. Now that we know the parameters here, there's no reason why we couldn't just build our landscape. And what I've done with this is I've given this a material. You can do smooth plastic as well. I've done grass for this, and the color I selected is the color that will appear on that grass. But you can do this all the way until you have filled in your space, and then start building your objects over it. And I still don't understand why there's a gap there when there is no gap here. So something in the translation is somewhat funky, but at least it gives us some idea of how we're going to fill in and be able to create a landscape plane that our character can move about in. Now it does get funky a little bit, so you'll have to pick the ones that you want to move from here, because you can't get at them from the clicking directly on the screen. But as kludgy as it is, it does enable us to fill in the landscape, and you can experiment with different sizes of landscape. And as I mentioned, you'll have to bring stuff down if you want to have it lower than the base plate. Because what will happen then is when you go into play, this thing will even play. Give it a second. Oh, well, of course, it looks like it fell through the world. So I'll have to stop that. And I guess these all need to be anchored. So if you anchor these, they shouldn't fall off the world. Let's see what that does. Alright, that one's anchored, so he can move around it now. And Otherwise he'd fall off the world. So there's our road. Get way out here. So that sort of defines the size of our landscape. All right. Okay, so what you see me doing now is I'm basically creating this lattice work here, and I do need to name each of these as I do it so I don't get confused. And I just continually hit Control D to duplicate, bring the next slat over, and I don't know if this is completely necessary to do it in such small slices, but it certainly works for me. Maybe one could take 8 and 9 here and duplicate them. Yeah, and then move the whole thing over. So there is the possibility, once you've got something in, to simply do duplications that way. And it gets the naming convention gets a little weird, but you could then take all of those and duplicate them and then cover them over like so. So that gets our field there. And once you've got the field covered, and then when you hit save, then when you hit play, you've got a uniform field for the character to go on. And I've made mine grass, as you can see. And everything's kind of floating over that. Oh, and he got, I don't know what happened to him. He got stuck in something out here. That's kind of weird. His legs gets caught in something. So he's okay until a certain point, and then his legs get kind of mired in. So I'm not sure what that's about. But everything should be done at as a y of 0 in position. So that seems to be right, because they're all done off one another. So why our little character fell in the ground, I just don't know. Then the road, I can get rid of the decal there. It's not necessary. Have the road there. The road should also be down at a y of 0. Except then it doesn't show up at all, so maybe I'll make it 5. No, that doesn't show up. Let's see if I raise it up. There it is. So it looks like 12 is about where the road is. And the greenhouse, just sort of right in there. As for the digesters, they can go down, and here we have a y maybe of 2 or maybe 3. Let's see what 5 does. And of course, if we want to look at them, we would hit F to zoom in, and that leaves them floating a bit. So maybe get them on the ground like that. And it takes some adjustment to get things in. Oops, don't want to do that. See. The house itself should be able to sit on the ground. And I need to get rid of the decal that's on there. This can definitely be made a different color. Brown on the house right there. And the classroom. So the basic idea now is that when you go to your Blender model and you turn on the various items that you have. Like, did we get the tool shed in? Let's see, the tool shed is not necessarily in. There's the goat pen, and there's the chicken coop over there, and there's the greenhouse. Where is the Pusheen's, raised bells, and goat shed? Okay, so there's the goat shed there. I'm going to give that a color. And we don't have the tool shed. So you want to make sure that everything is turned off when you're exporting except for what you're going to export. And then that's highlighted, and then hit File, Export, and then Wavefront Object. Make sure Selection Only is taken there, and then this will be tool shed. And you export that object, come into Roblox, and then you can add this part by simply duplicating any object that you have here, like this. And it doesn't now matter where you throw it, because now when you call this tool shed and then click on the folder down here and actually pick the tool shed, it has its own locational information built into it. It says your mesh contains location data. Would you like to move it to the given location? Then you say yes. And then it goes to where it's supposed to go. Now there seems to be some overlap there, but it looks okay. And that's how we begin to populate with different assets that are from the map. So once again, if I now turn on the, I guess I can turn on everything now. Just go down there. So we don't have in here yet the volleyball court. So we will find the volleyball court here, and in fact I can bring the volleyball court and the basketball court, and they should be the only things that we see. It'd be nice if I could just turn on only that and the others would go off, like when you're doing recording of music. But now I gotta take off everything else. So it's a bit of a laborious process. So now we just have those, which means that the faces, the triangles now is only 4. So you want as few triangles down here as possible when you bring it in. And then you can go to File and Export, and this will be called Volleyball and Basketball. Export those and go back into Roblox, and once again you can pick any object here if you can grab it. I'll pick the raised beds. In fact, I wanted to color them anyway. Color them a darker color, and I can duplicate them. Doesn't matter where I put it now. Is again, this one is going to be now the basketball and volleyball court. And then bring in the basketball and volleyball court, which comes in. It's very large. Don't resize it. Yes, move it to the location there it belongs. And there it is. It's come in. Make sure that it's now right on the ground where you want it. And so you're building up all of those assets in there where you can then put various things. It would be really nice if we could get the map on there properly, but it hasn't worked out. It's not the right size. So we're better off doing it like this. Now I'll do the bees, turn off the basketball, turn off the volleyball, and the bee is going to go in. And once again, notice that if I keep on the Google map, the triangles get up to 8,194. So you don't want that. That's why you need to turn that off, because that's a complicated mesh. So now export the beehive. And these are just the locations, mind you. This is not the actual object. These are just the planes that I'm doing, so I know where to put things in Roblox. So I can copy this and change its name to beehives, and then bring in the new mesh, beehive. That comes in. And really it shouldn't be that material, it should be sand. And the color for the beehives can be kind of greenish color that you can see. These also should be sand. The basketball and volleyball courts material can be sand, and the color there is definitely a whitish sand. For that. And we're beginning to get everything in place here. Now there's also fences. So I've put in fence by digester line, and there's another fence and another fence. I can probably do all the fences at once. I need to turn off the bees, and those are the fences. Now whether the fences will actually show up is another guess. Oh, and that fence is going way up in the air, so that's not good. That is definitely off. So I need to rotate that and bring it down to the ground. But it gives us an idea of where the fences need to go. And let's just see what that does in terms of if I export this. Fences 1. Go back to Roblox and bring in. So I guess it was this weird thing where you're going to pick an object and duplicate it, that mesh part, and then change its name. Yeah, so that gives us an idea of where the fences are supposed to go. And then, see, once you have these, and you're sort of sketching out all the different things that you want in your game, then you can go to the models that they have and put in fence. Find a fence that is similar to what you want to use, like this one here, and bring it in along the fence line. So we're really using this as a placeholder, and then you can do your Control D and just move fence bits around and start to build. Control D again, and you can of course select several fences. So here we have these models, which are the fences. Actually, it would help if you said fence so I'm going to call this fence, and I think I'm going to get rid of these other two fences and show you doing this again. So that one's called fence, and I will hit Control D and move it over, and now I have another fence. So they're all called fence now, and hit Control D and put another fence in, and then you can select each fence here, and then once you have the 3 of them selected, hit Control D, and then you can work at quicker scales like this. And you can even select all of them now and get an even longer fence, of course. Control D, and more rapidly lay out your fence lines. Oopsie, didn't mean to do that. Okay, so fences was that one. We have these fences here. And I keep moving my object by mistake, which I don't want to do. So do be careful with that, that you're not in move when you should be in select, and then you can move the whole line there. But take all those fences, Control D them, now hit move when you get to fences, and it becomes a little trickier getting them all to move. Start to get your fences in that way. It looks like I missed a fence there. So there's going to be some holes in the fences that we'll have to patch up. But what that means from practical purposes is that now when your character is in the game, ooh, that brought up. Somewhere down here on the horizon is a fence. If you can get through the mess there. It looks like the fences are floating and everything's falling, and then he fell down and died. Okay, now why did that happen? And then he gets up. It could be that these all need to be anchored. That's one thing that you may have to do. Select all the fences. Oops. Once you have everything there, it needs to be anchored. You have to click on anchor, and the same thing would be true of our maps, perhaps. If we select all of these, and of course our pushins, well, everything needs to be anchored. Otherwise, we see our barrels float away. Now the barrels didn't float away. So the barrels now are sitting properly, and we will replace them. He does get mired up though here for some reason. Something weird happens. I can't really account for. And he fell through the earth. So everything's falling away. So he hit something. The road is not anchored, perhaps. The goat shed not anchored. That road, is there more than one road? Where's that road? Looks like there are 2 roads. Well, that creates a problem. So this road's going to be deleted. And this road is anchored. Goat shed is anchored. Fences is not anchored. Now the fences is anchored. Raised beds are not anchored. Pushins are anchored. You can see because it's black up there. And these should all be anchored. So there's a lot of checking that you'll have to do. Making him run around the side now. Hoping he doesn't run out of energy. Now we see the road gums him up and he falls over. So there's a problem with him hitting the road. The road seems to be one of the big problems because it's a big mesh, and if it's too high and it is kind of warped, then he will bump into it. And so maybe the thing to do here is to use the road for reference, but actually use separate segments. Don't use a whole piece for the road, because I'm fairly certain that that is what's causing this problem. Because if I move the roads down so that you cannot see them and then hit play, then he shouldn't get caught up in anything. The buildings are askew. But yeah, that must have been what it was. He's not getting caught anymore until he gets toward the fence line. So there's the fence, but it's way up in the air. So you've got to do your due diligence on this and find your fence line and select them all. Hit F to go down to the ground. Come on in and definitely bring them down onto the ground. That's where they are. So they were up in the air. Then move it back to there. And this line here for our fence is no longer needed once you have that, because that can cause a problem too, because our fences are actually, what I've learned here is that you probably never want to have something that is in different geometries, because it creates collisions that are a problem. So use it to line stuff up and then get rid of it. So once more, we can keep it there for the time being. We can grab a bit of fence and duplicate it and move it here and go to the top view and rotate it. Thanks. And move this up. Sometimes it will act funny if it's got a collision on it. In fact, this is definitely, there you go, colliding. And there's this kind of incrementalism that's baffling sometimes too on how things move. Oh boy. Oh boy. All right then. Rotate. When that happens, you're best off just getting rid of it. Or you can go to that piece of fence and try to move it, but it's really hard because it's made up of so many parts. So you're best off deleting it, going to a piece of fence that, let's see if there is a piece of fence there. Duplicate that piece of fence, move it, bring it up, and it looks like rotating about the axis is green, and then bring it down, and that seems to be where the ground level is. So we can place it there on the terrain and then start working with that by doing Control D and move that out. And then select those pieces. But really you can do things like giving names is very important. So say that this is the cow pasture fence, or say fence actually, cow pasture, and then let's delete that, and let's delete that, and let's do the duplication of the cow fence pasture so that we have a good naming convention and we know what we're looking at there. And then you can select the other cow fence pastures, 1, 2, 3, duplicate them and move them up. Of course, the problem we're facing is that it's not actually going in the right direction. And for that, you may have to select everything and then hit rotate and see if you can get it to turn. Problem is that it gets stuck. So you lift it up and it's still stuck. So rotating things there, it's really kludgy. And that's because collisions is on. I think if you turn off collisions, no, it's not even turning. However, it is such a pain to try to get this thing to rotate that you're really better off building it piece by piece if you're not going in a straight line. So once again, I'm going to delete all this and come down to this part of the fence. If I can even get down to that part of the fence. And you can see how this line that we have of the fence line creates such a problem that it's always in your way, bumping into things. Because of the collision boxes. So with that said, what I think the best thing to do is for something like this is to get rid of that template and make every template that you do in Blender a separate piece. So pick that piece and say, for example, this is the goat pasture fence, and selection only, and call this goat pasture fence. Then you bring that in to Roblox. You can, of course, once again, pick any object, duplicate it, and then give it the name that you want, which is here is goat pasture. Oh, let's call it fence goat pasture. Pasture line, so I know that that's just for that. And then bring this in and get the object in, and then it comes in where it's supposed to. And it's got this incredible collision on it, and that's the problem, is this collision. So when you have it there, you have a basic line that you can work with that won't get in your way terribly. Then go up to your fence, any fence piece, duplicate it, bring it out to here, rotate it, so that you can get it reasonably, if you can, on there. It looks like there's a constraint on it that I want to remove. But if you can get it to line up, it's really wicked how it does that. And then move it back. But to get it to follow the fence line isn't so easy. You only get so many degrees of freedom, but you should also name this. And this is fence goat pasture. And then lift it up. When you're having trouble rotating an object, that's because it says rotate 45 degrees. So when you turn that off, now you have a completely free ability to do your rotation. So that's what you'll have to do for this. Make sure that rotate is unchecked. And the same with move. If you want really smooth moving, you turn that off. Now when you do this, you have a lot more control over your fence line here, and you can try to do it in bunches, but it probably is best to do your laying down very specifically. And put your fence lines in like so. Same with any of these. No idea why I can't select pieces easily. There it is. So this fence here, go to move and bring it over to the fence line and line it up. So getting this all the way laid in there, sometimes it helps to take a piece of the fence pasture and duplicate it and bring it to the end of the fence line so that you have an end point in there, and then you can fill in the rest later. But that's the best way to go about doing this. So that you can get your placeholders for things. So once again, we would go into here, and there's 2 bits of fence line there. Those we can export all at once for now. And call it double fence run. Come into Roblox, and here again you can take any part that you have. I'll take this for example, Control D it, and it's going to turn into my double fence run. Doesn't matter where I put it at this point. I'm going to call it fence double run, and bring in double fence run. And there it is right there, acting as a guide for us. Whoops, I picked up the wrong thing. And you can do the same thing with this piece. Take it, now call it fence double run, and rotate it. We have the freedom now to rotate it any which way we like. probably help if we have a top view for this. Rotate it again freely, and now we can duplicate it and start building out. Once again, we see there's a little bit of variance here. And later we'll have to go in and really tweak this. And of course the fence goes out farther than this, but it gives us an idea. Now you can try to take your fence goat pasture and just duplicate all of that and move that whole fence line over. Oh, that didn't work well, did it? So let's undo that. Fence double run. Should have been just fence double run. Ah, there's a bunch of double runs that I didn't see. Fence double run. Fence double run. Alright, now duplicate that and move that over here. And it does look like the piece of this has to be brought out. Alright, so we have the basic line there. That means that we can then get rid of the goat fence double run there. It's no longer necessary because we have those parts in there. So that's what we're doing. We're using everything as a placeholder and then removing the placeholders as we build our landscape.